You have a grandstand seat here to one of the most momentous events in the history of science. In less than a minute, you will see the most powerful explosion ever witnessed by human eyes.
Well, at least an explosion of knowledge. Welcome to the truth. It's been waiting. With commentary on the news, reviews, and interviews, it's the Libertarian Links webcast.
Linking the news stories together into a narrative, it's the Libertarian Links webcast, and thanks for joining us. We've now been seen in 8 countries: Canada, Poland, the United Kingdom, Germany, Norway, Spain, Mexico, and the United States. And we have 51 likes on the Facebook page, which is more success than I expected. So that's really great. We're going to be doing a giveaway here soon, so stay tuned. I'd like to give away a copy of Police State 4, The Rise of FEMA. So as we get closer to 100 likes on the Facebook page or a certain amount of views on the YouTube page, then I'll be giving that away, so stay tuned for details. We've got a lot of victorious news to cover. It's been really some heavy stuff with what's going on in Syria, but we've got domestic stuff, and the domestic stuff we've got is mostly positive, so that's really great. We can get right into it here because we got a lot to cover on the Facebook page. And in case you don't know, I had someone ask me who was watching the shows this week. They asked me, how do I check your sources? What are they? And I tell you where the story is coming from. I went back and watched my videos. I usually say this is from the AP, this is from HuffPost, this is from InfoWars, this is from wherever, Daily Mail. But if you want to follow up on any of the stories, and that is a great idea to do your own investigative work, you just need to go to the Facebook page, libertarianlinkshow.com, and all of the news that we're going to be covered is linked there, so you can follow those links, read the articles yourself, do your own investigation, and draw your own conclusions. It's very important to do that. Our first story from the page is another victory. They were removed because of their attack on the Second Amendment. That was my tagline. This is a story from HuffPost. Stunning victory for the NRA in state election. And I say this is a victory for the American people. Colorado recall results. Democratic state senators defeated in major victory for the NRA. Now, if you don't know what a recall vote is, it takes place before the normal election cycle, when you vote for your politicians in the state or at the national level. It's when the voters get together and say, you know what, we don't like what this person's doing. They get petitions signed that call for a special election, and then there is an election out of season to remove that person and have them replaced. It happened in California to Governor Gray Davis years back, and now it's happened to these 2 state senators from Colorado. The first recall election in Colorado's history on Tuesday marked a stunning victory for the National Rifle Association and gun rights activists. With the ouster of 2 Democrats, Senate President John Morse, Colorado Springs, and State Senator Angela Guerin from Pueblo, the 2 lawmakers were the target of separate recall fights over their support for stricter gun laws earlier this year. Now, after what happened in Aurora and after what happened in Sandy Hook, there was a very large push to bring stricter gun laws across the country. And in Colorado, there was one of the states where they made stricter gun laws. And some of those gun laws were background checks for all firearm purchases and bans on magazines over 15 rounds. Now, these aren't the strictest gun laws in the country. California has stricter ones. We can't have magazines over 10 rounds, and we already had background checks. New York has even stricter laws than this. So the people of Colorado, which is a Democrat state, wanted a recall, and they got it. And when the recall came in, they voted, and they had these 2 booted. Now, from what I understand, there would have been 4 recalls, but they couldn't get the ballots, the amount of signatures on the petitions for the other 2. But they got these 2 out, and now it's sent gun people who want stricter gun laws, it sent politicians reeling. I know that just here in California, that there was legislation that was about to be introduced to the Assembly for ammunition background checks, so you wouldn't be able to buy ammunition in California without a background check. That's been shelved. They are not going to vote on it now. It scared them, this recall. I know that this may move to other states. I've heard talk of West Virginia. I know that some of the politicians in New York are in hot water right now over those stricter gun laws. So this is good. We're turning the tide because the Second Amendment is important. It's a part of the Bill of Rights. It's just as essential as freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of religion. The Constitution is very clear that part of being a free society is having a well-armed and regulated militia. That's the point of the Second Amendment, because that is what keeps the government in check. That is what keeps foreign invaders in check, is an armed citizenry. That's the point of the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment isn't about hunting, like you always hear. The Second Amendment isn't about protecting your house, like you always hear, or your person. If you read the words, it's about securing freedom and securing freedom from tyranny, from the oppression of the government and external forces. So that's very interesting, and that's a positive. That's a great story. Another positive story is from the Daily Mail and NASA. Return of the Arctic ice cap as it grows by 60% in a year. And now it's global cooling. Record return of the Arctic ice cap as it grows by 60% in a year. The BBC reported in 2007 global warming would leave the Arctic ice-free by 2013. And the science they were using to say that there would be no ice in summer of 2013, they got from U.S. climatologists who said there would be no ice in 2013. Now here's my question. When I want to go to the river on the weekend and go swimming, I usually start checking the weather forecast on Monday. And it says, partly cloudy, 65 degrees. Wednesday I go back and I check the forecast. It says rainy, 60 degrees, right? And then by the weekend, it says 70 degrees and sunny. And I'm like, yeah, let's go to the river. If they can't predict 7 days out what the weather's going to be like, how can we expect them to predict 5 years out, 7 years out, 6 years out, 10 years out, 100 years out? It's not a surprise that they were wrong. The weather is hard to predict, especially when the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, discounts one of the most important factors of climate, the sun. They actually decided to say that the sun does not affect climate change. That is man-made. It's CO2 emissions from our cars and from our factories. I guess they forgot about the medieval warm period, because as far as I know, there were no cars or factories at that period. Maybe it was the king's flatulence, all of the kings and their flatulence that raised the temperatures. But more on that IPCC. Here, leaked report proves IPCC and the UN hid data proving solar activity influences climate change. This is a big deal because they want us to think and they want us to believe that it's all our fault, that it's all our what we do, our cars, our consumption, our factories, our power plants, that we are killing the planet, that we are going to have the catastrophic rise in sea levels, and that we're going to have hurricanes like crazy. I think, how many hurricanes were there this year? They said it was going to be an above average season for hurricanes. I think I checked the other day and there was only one hurricane. I think we got number 2 barreling down on the, actually it was a tropical storm last time I checked, barreling down on the east coast of Mexico. But it's only category 1 at best when it makes landfall. So they got that wrong too. No ice cap. They say that there's going to be record hurricane seasons, and it's not happening. So what's the deal? Well, the IPCC said this. No sun linked to climate change, right? Scientists have produced further compelling evidence showing that modern-day climate change is not caused by the sun's activity. According to Terry Sloan, the message coming from research is simple. We tried to corroborate the hypothesis, but we could not. As far as we can see, there's no reason to challenge the IPCC. So they've got it right. So we'd better carry on trying to cut carbon emissions. So the UN and the IPCC are saying it's all carbon emissions. But leaked documents suggest a larger impact of solar variations in the stratosphere. And if you remember ClimateGate was something that happened a couple years ago, and it showed that there was serious censorship going on among the climatologists at the UN. The ones who were anybody who was a dissenter, anyone who had any opposing view other than that global warming is directly impacted by carbon emissions was what they said was censored. They weren't allowed to speak out. And if you remember, you probably heard about ClimateGate. It began in November 2009, right before the Copenhagen Summit on Climate Change, and the servers got hacked at East Anglia University. And what they did was they pulled all of these emails out that were talking about how there was no consensus, that people were still divided about what was causing climate change, and even if there was climate change. And they want us to think that they're all united, that they all agree, that everything's right on, and that we're killing the earth with carbon emissions, and that the sun's got nothing to do with it. Well, now we know their predictions are wrong, that they've been covering things up and lying to us, and SDO, the Solar Dynamics Observatory, just finished a few-year study of the sun. And it showed us that it's not as simple as 11-year cycles, that there are two cycles on top of each other. We didn't know this before. The IPCC didn't know this. There's two cycles on top of each other. So one is what we can directly observe with the magnetic field on the sun. But there's another one underneath. So all of this new science is coming out. The sun's more complicated than we thought. And come on, who on their right mind would ever say climate is not affected by the sun? We would have to be idiots to believe something like that. In our next story, it's got more to do with the NSA and the spying that's going on there. NSA disguised itself as Google to spy, say reports. This is from CNET, which is owned by CBS. Earlier this week, TechDirt picked up on a passing mention in a Brazilian news story and a Slate article to point out that the U.S. National Security Agency had apparently impersonated Google on at least one occasion to gather data on people. In recently leaked document is any indication the U.S. National Security Agency appears to have put on a Google suit to gather intelligence. A technique commonly used by hackers, it's called a man-in-the-middle attack involving Google. It uses a fake security certificate to pose as a legitimate web service to bypass browser security settings and then intercept data on the unsuspecting person that the unsuspecting person is sending. Hackers could, for example, pose as a banking website and steal the passwords. The technique is particularly sly because the hackers then use the password to log onto a real banking site and then serve as the man in the middle, receiving requests from the banking customer and passing them to the bank, then returning the requested information to the customer while collecting the data for themselves, and neither the customer nor the bank realize what is happening. Such attacks can be used against email providers also. So basically, the NSA is putting up a fake security certificate and making a fake site. You log in and you do everything. They take your information and then they go to the real site and they do everything. And then when you click a selection on the fake site, they do it on the real site and then send the real stuff to you, so you don't know that they're observing you and collecting all of the information real time. Google provided a short statement. As for recent reports that the U.S. government has found ways to circumvent our security systems, we have no evidence any such thing has ever occurred. We provide our user data to governments only in accordance with the law. CNET got a no comment from the NSA in response to our request for more information. Now, I've been hearing for a long time that Google and the government are like this. They actually park their planes on military hangars. They have permission to use military bases. So I'm not surprised by this one bit that the NSA is masquerading as Google to collect information. Not one bit. Not surprised at all. Now, in a related story, Yahoo CEO fears defying NSA could mean prison. Yahoo chief Marissa Mayer said she feared winding up in prison for treason if she refused to comply with U.S. spy demands for data. Her comments came after she was asked what she is doing to protect Yahoo users from tyrannical government during an onstage interview Wednesday at TechCrunch Disrupt conference in San Francisco. So, what are we gathering from this? What we gather is there's more NSA spying. They're pretending that Google and the NSA are probably like this. Marissa Mayer feels intimidated at Yahoo that if she doesn't cooperate with the government and give your information over to them, that she could be tried for treason and sent to prison. So, this government is tyrannical. This government is out of control. Regardless of what Obama wants to say, regardless of how many times he says we're not spying on Americans, we know it's true. We know he is. We know they are. We know that this is the worst it's been in the United States of America ever for surveillance and the surveillance state. We are this close to the Stasi, to East German style secret police. This close. We know that they're sharing information with, in another story on the Libertarian League, we know that they share information with foreign states. We know that they share information with with other federal departments like the FBI and DEA. The information the NSA collects, we know that they collect it by pretending to be Google, that they collect it off your phone, they collect it off of your laptop, they collect it off of everything. Welcome to 1984.